Hello, everyone, and good day to you wherever you're coming to us from today. Thanks so much for joining us for our deep dive. I think it's number 4 into Uganda, focused on Bwindi Impenetrable National Park in Uganda. I'm Tad Bradley. For those of you that haven't met me virtually or in person, the North American sales rep for Classic Africa Safaris in Uganda and Rwanda. I'm going to be joined today by Lyndsay Harshman from Classic, who's also, both of us are coming to you from a very rainy, stereotypically rainy Seattle today.
It's a little early in the year for it to be like this.
It's supposed to be sunny next week, so we'll take advantage of that, hopefully. Our last bit of sun for the year. We're going to dive in here into Bwindi, and if you have questions, you can enter them into the Q&A form or the chat form. We'll try to answer them throughout, as well as at the end. We'll also be recording this as usual, and we'll archive it on our YouTube channel. So if you miss anything, you can always check back in later. So we're going to dive right in, but first, a bit of breaking news, if you haven't heard already, is that Uganda will be reopening as of October 1st. And I wanted Lyndsay to just give us the latest update on the status of that, what has been confirmed, what hasn't been confirmed, and where things are with reopening. Lyndsay?
Cool. Yeah, so we got word, the president did an address on Sunday night and did officially announce there had been speculation and discussion because there was a flight schedule that was released, so for international arrivals, but it has been confirmed, so that's great. UWA has released protocols, which they are in our COVID health and safety doc, so Tad will include a link to that. It does include masks for gorilla trekking and all primate trekking, which frankly, for anyone who's trekked primates in other places, it's kind of surprising that we didn't have to wear masks initially to trek gorillas to begin with, like you do in Mahogany with the chimps or elsewhere. And all WHO guidelines will be observed. The document outlines all of that. There is also right now, so the thing that's pending is a approved formal announcement from the Civil Aviation Authority. There is a document that's circulating that has been sent out in a couple of resources that you've probably seen in the last day. If you check the date on that, it's from the 14th of September, which was previous to the formal announcement of the country opening. It's a draft document that has not been signed off on. So as a company, we're not prepared to stand behind that because that was a leaked document. So stay tuned on that, and we will keep you apprised. It's really important because the Civil Aviation Authority is the one that basically says what you have to do to get into the country in terms of airport procedures. Right now, the announcement that the president read on Sunday entails a PCR negative test within 72 hours of arrival into the country. We don't have information beyond that. If there's, like Rwanda, if you need a test to leave the country, if you need to be tested during, that's has not been made formalized, made clear. So that's where we're at. And I will be sending out some information later today in terms of a classic blast that entails all of that, outlines that, and we will keep you posted when the CAA actually does release a formal document, but just be cognizant of the fact that that draft document that's circulating could certainly change, as we know. They do that all the time. So take it with a grain of salt, but that's it from me.
Great. Well, it's exciting to finally see Uganda reopening. Rwanda's been open for, gosh, a month or so now.
Yeah, we just had the first clients just completed their trip, and I did not get a chance this morning to read the trip evaluation, but just wrapped up. And I mean, luckily with Uganda, good and bad, right? Double-edged sword. We don't have anyone imminently landing. So some of these kinks that need to be ironed out in terms of protocols and details from CAA and other officials will have time to figure that out.
Got it.
Yeah.
All right.
Thanks.
So we're going to start off just a little bit of context and how we typically recommend guests, or you as the agent, include Bwindi. And Classic generally recommends that we do a counterclockwise itinerary here. If you've been paying attention to our past webinars, you will have seen that Entebbe is, of course, the gateway to Uganda, the international airport there. And so we generally prefer to have Bwindi be the end of a safari for a couple of reasons. The first is that guests would begin, likely, if they're doing a traditional Uganda driving circuit, to begin with chimp trekking, whether that's up in Murchison Falls if they're going up there, or in Kibale Forest where most do their chimp trekking. Chimp trekking is a bit easier. It also gives guides the chance to kind of evaluate how their guests are going to handle gorilla trekking. If they struggle with chimp trekking, then they're probably really going to struggle with gorilla trekking because it is quite a bit more difficult. So it's a good warm up for guests, a good chance for guides to evaluate the guest's level of fitness. And then, the second reason really is that this is what most guests are coming to Uganda for, is to see gorillas. It's the big part of their safari, and why not finish with the big highlight at the end. Of course, we can also do fly-ins into Bwindi. So it's not just about driving safaris today, and it's gotten a lot easier now with the flights that come in via the Mara on Air Kenya. You can see there from Kisumu, so basically Mara to Kisumu into Entebbe, and then connecting on to Aerolink, which is Air Kenya's partner in Uganda. And you can basically be on safari in the Mara in the morning, and then in Bwindi in the afternoon, in Kihihi in Buhoma. You can also fly from the Serengeti on Auric Air as well, and those also do connect in with the Aerolink flight. So it is a lot easier now to make gorilla trekking an extension from a Kenya or Tanzania safari. And we'll talk a little bit more about the logistics of that.
A couple of quick notes on that. Sorry, Tad. So Air Kenya has this, I'm glad this slide's here. For next year, it's operating on a minimum of 4 passengers, not 2, it's 4 passengers. So when I quote that rate for you, I will indicate that. And usually what we have to do is buy the seats. And if Hilda will check in with Air Kenya, about, I think they're saying now about a month prior to departure. And if there's more people on it, then it'll be adjusted accordingly. Excuse me. And Auric is now flying, I think it's 4 days a week.
Right.
So that changed.
Yeah, no longer daily, unfortunately, but hopefully that will change back once we get back to normal business. We'll see. Okay, so we're here to talk about Bwindi. There's great news, lots of great news actually around Bwindi, even before the next slide, which is really exciting news, but that is that the number of gorillas in the latest census is up to 459 in Bwindi. It's now, 460, can't do math, 67, because there's been a baby boom we'll talk about in a second. But in total, the number of gorillas between the two ecosystems in the Virungas and Bwindi are now at 1,063, which is also up from 2010, the census of 880. And if you look at 1997, there were 700 gorillas remaining. So the power of ecotourism and conservation travel in action here. So very exciting to see those numbers of gorillas up. In Uganda, the permits have gone up from $600 to $700 as of July. So keep that in mind. It's still cheaper than Rwanda, which is $1,500. So it is still pretty good value. There are no longer the seasonal rates. There used to be seasonal rates, discounted rates during the shoulder seasons of April and November. Those are no longer available. Why discount when you're already getting a discount by going to Uganda? And then we'll talk a little bit later about the gorilla habituation experience, which is available in Rushaga in the south of Bwindi. And that's a pretty unique experience, but one that there are some important notes about it, which Lyndsay and I will get into a little bit later. But as I very poorly alluded to, there's been a baby boom. Since July, there's been 8 gorilla babies born, which is super exciting. So those numbers are now up further from that previous slide. It's great news again to see these gorillas in such great shape, even without tourism, they're still being well protected, and the local communities have really embraced, keeping the gorillas healthy and safe, even in times of crisis without tourism. So exciting times. These are not pictures. Actually, the one in the upper right is a picture of one of the babies from the UWA Facebook page. So if you want more information on the baby boom, you can check out the Uganda Wildlife Authority Facebook page, and that's one of the new babies on the right. The other pictures, this one here is actually a picture I took back in April of 2019 when we were trekking in Bwindi, and we also saw a little 2-month-old baby as well, which is pretty exciting. We're going to get into trekking and some tips that we like to give to our agents and that we recommend you give to your guests. And there's one important one, which Lyndsay already told you about earlier, but we'll start off with, it's kind of obvious here, but we are trekking and hiking and possibly up to 6 hours with lots of elevation gain, with potentially slippery trails. You are in a rainforest after all, let's not forget that. So good, strong hiking boots with good tread and ankle support is really critical. Making sure your guests, if they're not hikers, purchase those boots well in advance of their trek and spend some time hiking or at least walking around in them so they're a little bit broken in prior to heading off on their safari and then gorilla trek. Some guests use light hikers, but you definitely need to make sure that you have a strong ankle support, especially Bwindi, because there's a chance for doing a lot of ups and downs, climbing on vines, and the trails can be slippery even in the dry season. Again, this is a rainforest, so it can be wet at any time of year. Speaking of pulling yourself up the mountain, as it were, and clutching onto vines and leaves and sticks and trees, you do want to recommend your guests bring gloves, and gardening gloves actually work exceptionally well. I've used them on every trek I've done, and I think it's a must-have. And then gaiters as well are highly recommended. Some lodges, mostly in Rwanda now, I'm not sure if it's started to be a practice in Uganda yet, but some lodges are giving out gaiters or giving them as part of their rates. There are a few that you can buy a trekking pack that includes gaiters. But again, probably good that your guests buy them ahead of time and make sure that they fit and know how to put them on. Our guides can, of course, help with that. Again, common sense, but long sleeves and long pants. Again, you're hiking in a very thick forest, rainforest. You want to tuck your pants into your socks to keep out those nasty little biting ants. Another good reason for gaiters on top of that, just a little extra layer of protection. Of course, again, I'll say it again, it's a rainforest, so you want a waterproof jacket. Muted colors are important, and it can rain anytime. It can also get hot or cold at any point. In Uganda, you're anywhere from about 4,500 feet up to potentially 8,000 feet in Bwindi. I think typically we're in about 6,000 feet, so it can be, the weather can change, and it can get cold, or it can get hot if the sun comes out and pretty steamy. So you want to have lots of layers. Basically, you want to dress like you would in Seattle in the fall or winter or springtime, basically 3/4 of the year here. Eating and drinking, really important. Again, you're at altitude, so that's one thing, but obviously energy is really important. Keeping well hydrated, so you want to bring lots of water. These are all tips that the classic guides as well as the trekking guides will give to your guests. But again, good to prepare them ahead of time. You also will get a picnic lunch from the lodge. Some are better than others. I stayed at Mahogany Springs last time, and they had a great picnic lunch. It included pizza, cold pizza, which was pretty cool. I loved it. But again, it depends on the lodge. So we also recommend that you encourage your guests to bring some of their own favorite snacks for trekking, whether that's trail mix or Cliff Bars, some sort of energy bars that they can have. It's just nice to have, food from home and food that you're used to eating while you're hiking or trekking with you on this potentially, pretty long day in the forest. You'll also need a day pack, of course, to put all of your extra clothes and your food in as well. Waterproof dry bags or Ziplocs work in a pinch as well for cameras. I'll say it 100th time, it is a rainforest, so it can be wet. Of course, you're not going to use flash photography. That will be drummed into your head by the classic guide as well as the gorilla rangers. And bringing extra clothes, again, dressing in layers. I like to bring a very basic first aid kit just to be extra prepared, as well as a headlamp, just because I'm a regular trekker and hiker and I like to be overly prepared. Obviously, there's going to be first aid kits that the guides are going to have as well. And then something that's I think really important to emphasize, even for your world-class mountain climbing guests, hire a porter. And it's not because you necessarily, even if you are an Everest mountain climber, you don't need a trekking porter to go see the gorillas. But you know what? It actually really makes a huge difference in the lives of the local community there, of the Porter Trekking Association that Classic is supporting. We'll talk about that in a second. And it costs $20-ish plus a tip. And it makes, like I said, it makes a huge difference in the lives of those porters. And you can hire as many as you need. So if you have guests that are a little bit not in as good a shape as they maybe should be to go trekking, you can hire 3-4 porters if your guests need them. When I was there last time in April last year, we had several of our guests that hired, I think, up to 3 porters to help them. We had a particularly challenging trek, and they were definitely very welcomed and needed. And so it's not anything shameful to do. It's actually encouraged. And again, you're helping the local community. There's also the trekking litter. So we actually had a guest in that trek that I did the last time who broke her wrist a few days before trekking in Bwindi. And she still did the trek, but she was carried in a litter, which is something that Classic can arrange ahead of time. Basically, UWA does not want to prevent anybody, even those that are unable to walk, to see the gorillas. So trekking litters are available, and they're basically carried up into the forest by a group of about 12 to 15 rotating porters. It's pretty interesting to see. And then lastly, this is the number, the +1, which is currently due to COVID precautions, as Lyndsay said, it is required to have 2 N95 masks or surgical mask or double layered cloth masks with filter. Probably N95s are the most safe, and they've got what you need to qualify there. So that's really critical now to make sure your guests are aware of that requirement moving forward until further notice.
Also with the porters, the UWA protocols document hints at the fact that the use of porters is going to slightly complicate distancing protocols. So, stay tuned on that. But part of what we're doing is Classic is obviously going to, please read the COVID document, everybody. I tried to make it as succinct as possible. It's not like 27 pages long. I think it's like, whatever it is, 8 pages.
Very readable.
Yeah. So take a look at that, because also what we're going to do is, while all the clients are responsible for their personal protection equipment, we are going to have backups, and we're also sending masks with the driver guides for the porters. The president has issued masks countrywide, but how well is that working? I have no idea. So the guide will have masks for the porters. It does, for anyone who's trekked and used a porter, sometimes you're being pushed and pulled. So obviously that will be an evolving process. We can pre-book porters for your clients, and we do include the tip, and that can be arranged. I would say 90% of our trade partners pre-book porters. And then if anyone wants to, hire additional porters, they can, or if $30 is make or break for someone, then they can hire on site.
The other thing about porters is beyond the help that they do give you, it is an opportunity to really connect with, a local Ugandan. And I'm actually still in touch with via WhatsApp, the wonders of WhatsApp, with my porter, Nelson, who I trekked with in April of 2019. And he's a coffee farmer, and he just benefited from Classics. So I'll take you to that slide, and Lyndsay, you can update us on this, but the feeding program that we've done for the porters. But I had a chance to really, we were actually trekking for about 6 hours. It was a hard trek that day, and I learned a lot about Nelson's life. And like I said, we're still in touch. So it gives you that chance to really connect on a meaningful level with a local Ugandan, not to mention giving you the help to get to the gorillas. Lyndsay, you want to give us the update on this awesome program that Classic is doing with the porters?
Tad, while I'm doing this, do you want to put the link to the Classic YouTube, if you can, into the chat?
I'll send it through afterwards, because I'll get out of my
mess it up. Okay. Yeah, Julie, I can't do it either because I'm in the viewing screen. So what we did, this is the result of just a bunch of brainstorming and problem solving. I think a lot of you are aware that there was a poaching incident in Bwindi kind of really shortly after lockdown started, and silverback Rafiki was killed. Lots of conservation and sort of human wildlife drama ensued. And a lot of this has to do with resources in Bwindi without the presence of tourism. And we kind of spun that out into a fundraiser to support the porters, because the porters, most of them do have other means of, I wouldn't say income. Most of them are sustenance farmers and literally have a tiny, tiny shamba that they can grow just enough food for their family. Nelson, Tad's porter, who has a coffee farmer, that's a slightly more significant job for a porter. There are 464 porters, and back in registered porters, and they rotate. It's a really interesting system, and it's run kind of like a union, like a co-op in a way, and includes microfinance opportunities, all kinds of stuff. It's really cool. It's a very interesting, it's unrelated to the government, unrelated to the UWA. So the porters weren't receiving any support at all. So what we did back in June, July was we launched a GoFundMe campaign in conjunction with our North American, mostly, our travel trade partners. And some of them sent it out to past travelers, and we ended up raising close to $14,000. So what we did was Classic donated the vehicles and the team. So all the beige shirts, those are our folks, and sent all the goods down to Bwindi and distributed them at the 4 UWA headquarters. And it was rice, posho, to make ugali, bar soap, cooking oil, sugar, salt, all kind of dried beans, I think, all kinds of stuff like that. So that was a really significant endeavor, and we're really thankful to our agents. There's some videos when Tad does send that YouTube link. There's videos on the distribution of that. So that was awesome.
Sorry, I was muted. All right. Yeah, incredible program, Lyndsay. Congrats and thanks to you and Phil and Mel and Hilda and Sissy and everybody involved on the ground to making that happen. Incredible impact, and raising $14,000. Kudos to Classic's partners and to your guests. It's just, it's amazing to see in these times of real need, people stepping up for these types of really needed programs right now. All right, so we're going to dive in here to Bwindi and go through some of the differences logistically between the lodges in the north and the south, and how you can all pull it all together. And of course, if you have questions and if you don't remember any of this, Lyndsay will of course be able to guide you after the fact when you're asking questions about where to have your guests trek. So if we're going to start off in northern Bwindi, which is the Buhoma and Ruhija regions, and this is just a slide to show you the gateways into those regions, especially if your guests are doing fly-ins. If they're going to fly in, or if they're staying in Buhoma, they're going to fly into Kihihi in the north, and this is about an hour and a half's drive from Kihihi down to Buhoma. If they're going to be trekking in Nkuringo or Rushaga in the south of Bwindi, they're going to fly into Kisoro, and it's about an hour and a half drive as well from Kisoro to both of those trekking regions. It's about 45 minutes from there to Magahinga National Park, which we will talk about at the end as well, where the Volcanoes property is, and about 45 minutes to Chameleon Hill Lodge or Lake Mutanda Resort, which are other properties in the south of Bwindi. But starting here in the north, we have 2 trekking regions, Buhoma and Ruhija. So all of the lodges that Classic recommends are located in Buhoma. It is our first choice for trekking permits. The only time that we would be issuing permits in Ruhija is if the permits in Buhoma are sold out, which does happen, and permits are in pretty short supply for some months next year, which Lyndsay can update us on. There are no properties that meets classic standards, let's say, in Rhodesia. So we do not put guests in there except on very rare occasions. So if your guests are trekking in Rhodesia, it means that they will stay in Buhoma, and then we'll have to drive in the morning to the trailhead in Rhodesia. And it's about an 1.5 to 2 hour drive. So it means it's an earlier morning. It doesn't mean it's a worse trek. It doesn't mean it's a harder trek. There really are, no specific differences necessarily between the two regions as far as difficulty. It just means that there is that drive there and back in the morning. Again, if there are permits available in Buhoma, of course, that is our first choice and where we will try to put your guests. Buhoma, as I said, is about an 1.5 hours from Kihihi. It's also about 4 hours from Queen Elizabeth, Lynds, thereabouts. So if your guests are doing a driving safari and they're doing that counterclockwise routing, they would be in Queen Elizabeth before and then heading down to Kihihi. They may be going via Ishasha or coming from Ishasha Wilderness Camp, for example, which is a shorter drive, but it is about 4 to 5 hours between those two parks. I'm going to go through a couple of the properties here. Gorilla Forest Camp, the sanctuary property, looking really good. I was there again about 1.5 years ago. They had refurbed the main lodge. It looks really smart. It's kind of luxury without pretension. There are, I believe, 8 tents. Should check my notes, but I think about 8 tents, maybe 10. And they were also planning to do a refurb of the bathrooms. 10 tents. They were doing a refurb of the bathrooms. They had done a light refresh on the interior of the rooms. There was a bit of an odd configuration of the bathrooms where the bathtub was kind of set apart from the rest of the room, whereas the toilet was like in the middle of the room, which would seem to make more sense to put the toilet behind a door. And that was the plan to do so. But regardless, really nice camp and has that tented feel. And the main areas are, just really comfortable. And it's also located just inside the park, very walkable to the park headquarters, and has a real kind of rainforest feel to it with the boma here in the open. And like any sanctuary property, really top level of service, great food, and just a really nice one of our top luxury properties in the northern Buhoma region.
I do want to quickly note that keep in mind that it's tented. And you can see this is a good slide because that's the main area and it's completely open. So from time to time we do, especially sort of April, May, November, it's very cold. And they do offer, what are they called? Electric blankets and hot water bottles and all of that. But you need to make sure you advise clients that it can be really chilly and very damp feeling. So it is something to consider that time of the year. If they want like a roaring fireplace in a cottage, then GFC is probably not the right fit for them. You're not in, the middle of the Masai Mara where it might be very warm and sunny here in a rainforest.
Great points. So maybe a better fit would be Volcanoes Bwindi Lodge in that case, located also just at the park headquarters. And like every Volcanoes property, it's really exceptionally well run, great service, great food. They are currently in the process of doing a refurbishment of the cottages. I did think the older ones were getting a little bit old and tired, a little bit musty. They've been around for a number of years. They do have at least one deluxe cottage, which eventually that's the template for the remainder of the cottages will eventually be rebuilt in that style. The deluxe cottage was beautiful, and I would highly recommend if it's available to try to secure that, or Lyndsay certainly will. It's a little bit more expensive, but I think for any luxury level guest, it would be welcomed. But it just is, again, a very unpretentious lodge, great location, beautiful views. I think they do have fireplaces inside the rooms here, so it does have that little mountain cottage feel to it, which is much different than the tented feel of GFC. There you go. There's actually the deluxe room with that nice roaring fireplace. It does come in handy many times out of the year. Something important with Bwindi is Volcanoes offers a stay 5, pay 4 between Bwindi and Champura Gorge Lodge up in Queen Elizabeth. So if your guests are staying 5 nights between the two properties, which is fairly easily done, then you can take advantage of that one free night with the stay 5, pay 4. Volcanoes does have a private butler with each room. You do get the 30-minute massage. Additional 50-minute massage is like $50, so really well worth it after a long day of trekking. And as with Volcanoes everywhere, they have some incredible community initiatives, including the Bwindi Bar, which is a great place to toast your guerrilla trekking success, hopefully, after a long day in the forest. And it's located on the main drag in Buhoma town, and is a great place for drinks and light snacks in the afternoon. Also in the morning, if you're not trekking, to go have a cup of coffee there and just see the way the community goes about their day, and all the profits of that go to support the local community projects that Volcanoes is involved in. And there's just too many of them to go into in this itinerary, but there's a lot of great work that Volcanoes is doing as per usual with them. In the more mid-level area, it's not a huge step down from Bwindi or GFC, but a little bit more of a mid-level option is Mahogany Springs Lodge. The rates are exceptional. Really nice, comfortable property. This is the main lodge, big, open, airy, bright, and again, very unpretentious, great service, nice staff, and just doesn't have quite the number of design touches that a Bwindi or a GFC had. Man, I think I have just jinxed the weather here in Seattle talking about the rainforest so much, because it is absolutely dumping rain here right now. You may be able to hear it outside my window. This is the presidential suite. So they have a couple of options with a honeymoon suite or a presidential suite, as well as a family suite, which is 2 in-suite rooms with a connecting lounge. And they do offer here a trekking kit, which you can purchase ahead of time, which includes, your gaiters, water bottle, hats. They even had a fan, like a electric or battery powered fan as well, which is kind of funny. But it's a great lodge. And again, Classic has amazing rates here with this particular property. It's a little bit farther away from the trekking HQ, but it's a 5-minute drive, so not a big deal at all. Lyndsay, anything else to add on properties in Buhoma before we move on?
Let's see here. Guerrilla Forest Camp includes within our rates, a community walk. They use the term guided, but I think it's just it's a staff member from the lodge, so people feel comfortable. So that's great. We don't book any activities after guerrilla trekking, just because the timing is so up in the air.
Right.
So GFC has the community walk. Bwindi Lodge has the tea plantation visit. You touched on the Bwindi Bar. There's a river walk. Mahogany Springs, we have included special in our rates, a visit for 2, Ride for a Woman, which is also a nonprofit in the area. So that, those are all, perfect. Those are all things that when people get back, usually, if it's me, I usually just sit and grab a glass of white wine and sit out on the veranda. But for people who want to do something else in their day, if their legs are not complete jello, then there are opportunities. And every single one of them is carefully vetted and really has a positive effect on the community.
Yeah, and we're still trying to sort out as Lyndsay said with the porters, what the impact with COVID is on these community visits, which I'm sure Lyndsay will communicate further as you start to have bookings in Uganda and as this progresses. But Ride for a Woman is an amazing organization. They do the traditional dances at the Bwindi Park headquarters before you go trekking, but you can also visit their headquarters. It's a charitable organization started by a local Ugandan woman and man who it supports women who are dealing with HIV, with poverty, the impacts of poverty, as well as domestic violence. It's benefiting about 300 women right now. You can go and take a cooking class. You can go learn how to do the traditional dance, which is pretty cool. If you're up for that, you can learn how to weave traditional baskets. And then they also have a shop as well, where again, all the profits go to support the organization. And it's, I think, one of the best places to buy traditional handicrafts. And again, that it's going to a good place. The Batwa
also works really well, just really quickly, on the day that you fly from Entebbe into Kihihi for the fly-ins. Those flights usually are morning or midday. So you have that afternoon, which we can do Ride for a Woman, or Tad's going to talk about the Batwa Experience. So it's not just limited to time after guerrilla trekking.
Yeah, and the Batwa Experience, there are a variety of Batwa experiences available throughout Bwindi as well as Magahinga. Some are better than others. You know, the sad reality of the fact is the Batwa are what I think Praveen from Volcanoes is termed conservation refugees. I don't know if it's his term, but I heard him say it. And the Batwa, of course, lived inside of Bwindi prior to it being a UNESCO World Heritage Site. And then when it was gazetted in 1991, they were removed from the forest and from their forest homes, and now have to live on the fringes of the forest and really struggle with pretty acute poverty and aren't able to really live their traditional lives. With these Batwa experiences that, again, you can do in Buhoma, you can do elsewhere in the south of the park, as well as Magahinga. These are not the way the Batwa live today. This is a demonstration of what their lives used to be like prior to 1991. And so if your guests are aware of that, we usually get pretty good feedback. If they are going into this thinking that this is they're going to go to a real Batwa village and see how they live today, then that they oftentimes leave disappointed. So it's important to set the right expectations and then to just ask Lyndsay ahead of time, depending on where they're going to be staying, whether the Batwa experience in that particular region is one that the Classic would recommend.
Yeah, we've vetted them pretty carefully. So the Batwa Experience, capital B, capital E, is the one that was developed in conjunction with Guerrilla Forest Camp and is in Buhoma. There are other village visits, some of which even vary year to year. And we've pulled some from offerings. So just ask, and it just really depends. I can give you the verbiage and we can walk through those options. But I think, like Tad said, it's really key for people to understand that the Batwa are victims of wildlife conservation. And it's sort of a humanitarian issue because they were removed from the park. So it's not a contemporary experience, contemporary lifestyle experience.
Yeah, all right. So then going from Buhoma to the south of the park, and I should have a map here, but there'll be another map in a second we'll look at. But if you're going to go around the park and you're going to stay both in Buhoma as well as in Nkuringo or Rushaga in the south, there's a couple ways to do that. You can drive around, which takes anywhere from 5 to 8 hours, depending on how the road is, or you can do the Cross-Bwindi Trek, which I had the great fortune to do the last time I was in Uganda. Lyndsay, you've done it as well years ago. There are a couple of options, but generally speaking, it is a full day, 6 to 7 hours of walking through the forest. You're not going to see gorillas, very unlikely to see gorillas. I guess it's possible, but it's highly unlikely. You will likely see other primates, incredible bird life, butterflies, amazing, fauna as well, flora and beautiful flowers. But it's also hard. It's a hard day's hike. I was with two incredibly two people in very good shape there, Chris and Alexis. And we did it pretty quickly, and it was challenging, but it was so well worth it. You can see the picture there on the left of the GPS showing the trail through the park. There are a couple ways to do it. There's the longer trail, which you basically hike literally from Buhoma all the way to the Nkuringo trailhead, which requires you then to climb up the Nkuringo trail at the end. So it's a hard finish. There's a shorter trail where you hike to the Ivy River, and then a vehicle can pick you or your guests up at that point and drive from the Ivy River trailhead to Nkuringo, which cuts off a little bit of time, and then you don't have to do that hike up the very steep ending as well. You can also do it from Nkuringo to Buhoma. It goes in either directions. Like I said, it takes 6 to 7 hours. So in some cases, it's actually faster to walk across Bwindi than it is to drive. We actually beat the rest of the guests who did drive around. We beat them by an hour or so. They stopped to shop and things, but it's for your adventurous clients who like to trek, who have a little bit of extra time. It does, of course, require a night in Buhoma, or 2 nights if they're going to do a gorilla trek there, and then at least a second night in Nkuringo to then continue on the next day. Or if they're going to do a second trek in the south, it'll require 2 nights in both areas. So for adventurous clients who like to hike, I think it's a must-do if they have the time, and it really does immerse you in this incredible forest.
It's amazing. I think it's one of my favorite things I've ever done. It's really, when you're gorilla trekking, you don't stop and observe the forest as much because you're so focused on seeing the gorillas. And I think that Bwindi is gobsmackingly beautiful.
It truly is. Yeah. And it really does, like you say, Lyndsay, it does give you a better appreciation for this incredible forest. Okay, so this is now the southern part of the park. We've been up here in Buhoma or Ruhija, where the two trekking points are. In the south, it's Nkuringo or Rushaga. Just to reiterate and hammer the point home, if you have permits in Nkuringo or Rushaga, you must stay, or your guest must stay in either Nkuringo or Rushaga or nearby. They cannot have permits in the south of the park in either of these two places and stay in Buhoma. And the reverse is also true. So just making sure that it is not possible to stay in the north and trek in the south, or stay in the south and trek in the north. You have to be in one of the two areas to do your trekking where you're going to be staying as well. So Nkuringo, Clouds Lodge is located, which many of you probably are aware of, probably the most upscale luxury lodge in Bwindi. Rushaga, there are currently no properties that Classic is comfortable selling. And then just near Nkuringo and Rushaga are Chameleon Hill Lodge and Mutanda Lake Resort. So we'll talk about those. Clouds is a wonderful property right at the Nkuringo trailhead. There are eight little cottages. They're very spacious. I would again call it understated luxury, homey luxury. You can flop down on these overstuffed couches in the main lodge and put your feet up and not feel like you're out of place, but yet the service and the food and just the decor and the style really do, just really do make you feel incredibly luxuriously comfortable. Each of the cottages has a roaring fireplace. They do have 2 family units as well, with 2 en-suite bedrooms with connecting lounge. They're all very spacious and they've all got incredible views. This is the view from the main lodge looking over the Virunga volcanoes. I think Phil Ward likes to say that, he sat here one evening looking out over this view and it was just waiting for the pterodactyls to come flying down, because it does feel
Very
like you're taking a step back in time. Yeah, very Jurassic
quick comment
Park.
on Clouds. This is a great option for families. I mean, obviously with the gorilla trekking age being a minimum of 15, we can apply for 13, 14. 13 is going to be tough, but UWA usually grants approval for 14 and up. Clouds we have amazing negotiated rates, and those include rates for kids who happen to be up to 18. So if you have a family with teenagers and they're pretty fit, because Nkuringo trekking is very steep, very steep. You have Rushaga, Ruhija, and Buhoma are all really similar levels of challenge. And Nkuringo, you trek down. When we did it last June, it was about 2,000 feet that we went down. And then we had to, of course, come back up that. So you trek down to see the gorillas and turn around to come up. But if you have a family with teens and they're fit, it's an amazing, amazing value for money. So keep that in mind when you have those clients.
And Lyndsay, you were saying Clouds is planning to do a refurb, or they plan to do it this year, but didn't happen.
Yeah, it was scheduled for April, and then they pulled it, which I don't quite understand, because I would have assumed in March that they would have had all the stuff, but anyway, they didn't do it. So it's planned for April 2021. The main area, the picture that Tad had in there, that was all redone, I think 2 seasons ago, and it looks really nice. The rooms are, I think, so I was there last June and they had done 1. And then the others, they were slowly trying to work on, but they needed to obviously close it down. They're tired. The rooms are tired. I will say that. Nothing major, but just the linens need a refresh, all of that. They're doing new colors. So what you see here will be much more, I assume, what you see in the rooms. So stay tuned on that and we'll keep you posted.
All right, the other options, as I mentioned, for the southern part of Bwindi are Chameleon Hill and Mutanda Lake Resort. And then we'll get to the Volcanoes property at Mount Gahinga. Chameleon Hill and Lake Mutanda both look out over the Mutanda lakes, or Lake Mutanda, and they have stunning views as well, as you'll see. If you're staying in either one of these places, you can trek in either Rushaga or Nkuringo. It's about 45 minutes to an hour's drive from either property to either one of those trailheads, roughly speaking. You can also do golden monkey trekking in Gahinga National Forest or National Park, and you can do that if you're staying at Chameleon Hill or Lake Mutanda. And I think it's about an hour's drive down to Lake Mutanda or to Gahinga to do the golden monkey trekking. Chameleon Hill Lodge has this incredible view. Not only like Clouds has a view of the Virungas, which is pretty spectacular as you saw, but Chameleon Hill has that plus Lake Mutanda in front of it. It kind of, I think it might beat the Clouds view by just a touch because of that lake as well. There are 10 of these really funky looking cottages, very colorful. The story goes that the owner's daughter or son, 11 or 12-year-old son or daughter, sketched them out, and she built them as sketched. I don't know if that's completely true or not, but it's a fun story, and it does just have this incredible splashes of color everywhere. Each room has a different color scheme on the inside. On the right, lower right, that's the main lodge, the entry to the main lodge, and you can see those beautiful colorful buildings as you're approaching, sitting up on the ridge overlooking Lake Mutanda and the Virungas.
It's beyond. Definitely not, I don't think it's as jarring as it looks, because I get asked a lot. We stayed here last year for my birthday, and the picture in the lower corner is a pretty old picture. It's super lush and huge gardens now. It doesn't have that, like, it's very artistic and very kind of bohemian. I love it.
I love the service and the food as well here. I remember, I haven't been here to stay since 2014, but sitting out on their deck overlooking the lake with these amazing homemade potato chips and some sort of aioli dip, the things you remember. But the food was great, and the just really earnest and wonderful service by the staff. And the rooms are a little bit smaller, but they all have these incredible views. And as Lyndsay said, these very lush, beautiful indigenous gardens as well. And the number of optional activities that you can do when staying at either this lodge or Mutanda Lake Resort are really fantastic. You can go out onto the lake and do a lake boat cruise to visit some of the villages that are actually on the islands on the lake. You can go and do a village tour nearby, learn about basket weaving, and then of course there's a number of other hikes that one can do around the lake or into the forests nearby. And Lyndsay can advise on those different optional activities that are available and included in the rates, I believe, here at Chameleon Hill, right, Lyndsay? These optional activities?
Some of them are, and some of them aren't.
Okay.
Yeah.
And then, like I said, you can do golden monkey trekking if you're staying here or at Mutanda Lake Resort, and of course at Mount Gahinga, the Volcanoes property. Mutanda Lake, it's actually Mutanda Lake Resort, is a mid-level property, but again, and actually right at the lake level, whereas Chameleon Hill is up on a ridge above the lake. And this is a good option for, mid-level, and for those that do want to spend some other time enjoying all that this region has to offer with the lakes. So interior of the rooms and the various optional activities, which are at additional cost, are a boat cruise. They do like a wine and cheese boat cruise as well. You can do a traditional canoe cruise across the lake, visiting some of the island villages. They actually have stand-up paddle boards, as you see in the lower right, which is pretty exceptional. So all of these would come at an additional cost, which Lyndsay can advise if you have guests that are interested. And this would be
great for families too. Phil stayed here in January with his son. Joseph is, I think, 12, 13, and it's really cool. Very comfortable. We usually quote the luxury rooms, super affordable.
How many
so
rooms
it's good.
Do they have there? How many rooms?
Off the top of my head, I don't know, because we don't usually use the standards. We usually use the luxury, and I think there's maybe like 6 luxury rooms, something like that. But really, really a great option if you're trying to keep the price point down. I think it's well run. I mean, Phil's pretty picky, and he enjoyed it, so I think it's worth noting. And also, Mutanda is, along with the lake, the Crater Lake at Chyananga, those are the 2 swimmable lakes. So it's actually no water predators, no bilharzia, really safe to swim in, and it's really warm. Yeah, it's really warm, and there's hot springs in the area, not for sitting, but the geothermal activity keeps the water temperature up. So it's really fun. I mean, go gorilla trekking and then jump in a lake like that. Amazing.
We're going to wrap up here with the Volcanoes property in Mahogany National Park, located right on the border of Rwanda, with the Virunga volcanoes in the distance there. This is about 45 minutes from Kahihi, the airstrip, and there is one gorilla family. Sorry, Kisoro, thanks. And there's one gorilla family available for trekking right now on the Ugandan side, which has been consistently there for the past 3 years. Hopefully they stay on the Ugandan side, but so far so good. They have upgraded 2 of the rooms here at Gahinga, which are the deluxe rooms, a little bit more expensive than the standard rooms, but again, according to Phil on his latest visit, really highly recommend the deluxe rooms over the standard rooms. Standard rooms are, again, a bit dated, a bit old, do need some refreshing. So, it really would be probably the most basic rooms of any Volcanoes lodge at Gahinga Lodge. But again, they are in the process of updating them, and those deluxe rooms, as you see on your screen, are beautiful and very similar, kind of that volcano style. And as usual with Volcanoes, there's a lot of optional activities. Of course, there is golden monkey trekking available, and then Volcanoes has recently also built a village for the local Batwa, and this was something that was actually supported by the Adventure Travel Conservation Fund recently to help fund the construction of this village. And it is, you know, the Batwa that lived in the national park prior to it being gazetted in 1991 really did not have any place to live. They were squatters on the edge of the park, and so for the first time, thanks to the work that Volcanoes has done with the communities, they have a permanent village that's built in a semi-traditional style to the way the Batwa would have lived in the forest. And you can go and visit this village. Your guests can visit this village. You can also, there is several Batwa experiences where they will demonstrate how they used to live inside the forest, demonstrate their traditional medicinal uses of herbs, how they used to hunt and make fire, things of that sort. So that's all included in the rates at Mount Gahinga Lodge as well. There's also a stay 3, pay 2. No, stay 2, you get the third at 50% off here.
50% off, yeah. So. And the same applies with, just because we're talking about it, with Chambora Gorge Lodge. So if people for some reason say your clients aren't going to Bwindi Lodge, I can do that 50% discount on the third night at Chambora, and or if they're going to Gahinga, do that there. So it's a good deal.
And we will finish up here with the gorilla habituation experience. As I said, it's kind of important notes around this experience. It's only available in the Rushaga sector, which is in the south, next to Nkuringo. So your guests that are staying either at Clouds in Nkuringo, at Chameleon Hill, or Mutanda Lake Resort can go and do this habituation experience. There's a maximum of 4 guests per trek. Permits are $1,500 for up to 4 hours with the gorillas. It may not be a full 4 hours. These are unhabituated gorillas, or gorillas that are in the midst of becoming habituated. So they are less tolerant of humans up to this point, and so they may be on the move. And because of that as well, it's really important that your guests have a high level of fitness for this particular trekking activity. A normal gorilla trek, you can get away with not being super fit. For the habituation experience, because the gorillas are moving a lot more, your guests really do need to have a good level of fitness, and they could be trekking up to 7,500 feet. And this has been pretty popular, but Lyndsay, you have some important notes here from feedback from past guests that I think would be useful to share.
Yeah, I mean, it's something to consider. I mean, obviously what Tad just said, and this rings true with both the gorilla habituation and the chimp habituation and Kibali, semi or non-habituated primates probably don't want to hang out with you. So you have to just really prepare your clients that this is, the primates are habituated by the UWA, the Uganda Wildlife Authority. They're not going to be with a primatologist. They're not going to be with a conservationist. They are with park rangers. who definitely certainly are engaging, and as engaging as the clients engage with them. I don't know how to say that. So just it is a conservation experience because of the nature of the habituation, but it is definitely not done by researchers or anything like that. It's really challenging just because of the length, and of course the length of the trek and the time. You're in the forest the entire day, and you are required to, not required, but as the gorillas move, you follow them. So it's pretty different. A lot of the habituated families are just really clued in. I mean, we don't have to, talk about how smart gorillas are. So the habituated families know that you've got the hour, and almost like clockwork, they really kind of wander off at an hour. Something to keep in mind, if you have clients who are really keen photographers, the habituation experience may not deliver so much in terms of those like picture perfect moments. So you might want to do one standard trek and one habituation.
Great advice. And we're going to leave it at that. If you have other questions, I'm sorry to say this is a webinar day for me, and I have to run to another one right now. But I think we've answered most of your questions throughout the presentation. And of course, if you have other ones, just shoot Lyndsay or I an email. We can get back to you with that via email or over the phone, or set up a private Zoom if you want to dive into some of this in more detail. And Lyndsay is your main contact for any Uganda inquiries. Keep your eye out for the updates from Classic later today or later this week about the reopening of Uganda. And thanks so much for spending an hour with us. Hopefully it was useful and interesting. Lyndsay, as always, thanks for your insight and knowledge. And we'll send a follow-up to this over the next few days. And have a great rest of the day, everyone.
Thank you.
Bye.